Hey, this is Darren from Property Prosperity. Today I thought I'd have a bit of a chat about researching more information about a property. It may be a property you already own and we're considering developing it, or maybe maybe considering renovating the property or doing something to the property we already have. Or it may be that we're looking at buying a property and we want to find out a little bit more about it before we take the plunge and go and buy it. And the reason why it's important to really research, particularly if you're about to buy a property, or even if you're about to develop a property, is if you're about to buy a property, you don't want to make a mistake at the end of the day. Hey Mark, thanks for joining. Once you bought it, and then you're stuck with it. Hey Andrew, thanks for joining. And so even if you decide you've made a bit of a mistake, the problem with property is it's quite expensive to buy it, not just for the cost of it, but also things like stamp duty. So once you've bought it, and then you've realised you made a mistake, hang on, I've got the wrong property here and I want to sell it again. By the time you bought it and you paid stamp duty, and then you sell it and you pay agents fees, which is 2 or 3%, you're almost down, almost 10%, I suppose, when you take into account any other costs and hassles along the way. So you can see why you really want to make sure, if that was a $400,000 property, if you make a mistake and you buy it and then you decide you have to sell it again because you got the wrong property, worst case scenario, you're stuck with this property, which means your money's locked in with this property that essentially was a mistake. Or best case scenario, you decide to sell it and just move on and take it as a learning experience. But even then, you're down, $400,000 property. That's 40 grand potentially you're down. So that's why I think it's really important for people to put a lot more effort in up front. It's amazing how often people buy a property and just walk around for 2 minutes at the open inspection, then just buy it and then cross their fingers and hope for the best. Even I talk to people that are looking at doing a development. They pretty much just ring up the council. Can I subdivide it? Yep, I can subdivide it. Awesome, let's go and buy it and start doing the subdivision, rather than putting in all the research up front to make sure. An example of a subdivision, not just whether you can subdivide, but whether you should subdivide, and that's really you're going to be better off at the end than you are at the start. And likewise, similar sort of scenario if you're doing a renovation. Are you going to be better off after you've done the renovation than before you've done the renovation? I think a lot of people make assumptions with property that you always make money and everyone always makes money. Whereas quite often, I've done enough property developments now, and I've helped enough clients out to see that quite often, not a lot of people do make money out of property when they've if they've made some mistakes along the way and haven't had the right information up front. So with that bearing in mind, I thought I'd just give you a bit of heads up of some of the information you might want to go and source on the internet. If you can see how valuable it is to have information and to not make a mistake, you understand then why it's worth putting a little bit more time and researching and making sure you don't miss anything when you go and buy a property. So, if I'm analysing a subdivision for a client, I'd have almost 300 pages of information that we'd go through just to make sure I haven't missed a single thing. Because the problem with with a development or a renovation or any of that sort of stuff, you can't stop halfway through. You've got to get all the way to the end, otherwise you make the profit at the end, you don't make the profit halfway through. So if you get stuck in the middle, quite often you're probably worse off than you were if you'd done nothing in the first place. So website you want to check out is probably the first thing you might want to go and do is just maybe get a copy of the title. You might find if you're buying a property, the agent will have a copy of the title. If you're not so sure, if they don't have a copy to give to you, then you can actually go on to government website. Most of these things, I just Google it, to be honest. So probably I'm telling you websites to go and look at, but more I'm telling you about pieces of information you need to go and source. So, there is, depending where you are in Australia, there's going to be different places to go and find this, but just type in certificate of title, purchase certificate of title in whatever state you happen to be in, and it'll give you a government website where you can go in there and source a certificate of title. Or you might have a conveyancer that is a mate of yours. You might give them a call, or a real estate agent. They might have access to be able to tell you how to get a copy of the certificate of title. So that's why the first thing, what that's going to reveal to you is any issues associated with the block as far as easements or encumbrances or caveats, and again, if you don't know what any of these things are, then have a chat to your conveyancer. My advice is get a conveyancer that you trust. That would be really focused on the certificate of title. So before you buy a property, ring up your conveyancer and say, hey, I'm looking at buying this property. Is there anything I need to look out for? And they may charge you the cost it is to print off a certificate of title, which is only like $10 or something, not particularly expensive. So get a copy of the certificate of title. Make sure there's no surprises in there. Nothing that's going to get you caught out. And like I said, just get your conveyancer just to double check it and make sure you haven't missed anything that's fairly obvious on there. Other things you might want to research too is have a think about council zoning and policy areas, and the development plan. Try and understand that area. Even if you're not going to do a development and you're not actually going to do anything to change the property, it's still good to understand what effects things might have on surrounding areas. So go off and you can ring up the council, but still it's sometimes not. I don't know, sometimes when you talk to the council and just give them a call, you might be talking to just the person that answers the phone, which might be the receptionist, may not be a planner as such, but even then, if you get hold of them when they're having a bad day, you never know, they might just make a mistake. So my advice is get on there and have a look at the development plan, try and narrow down into your particular property, find out what zone it's in and what policy area it's in, and then go through all the policy maps and try and find out if there's anything else surprising. Is it heritage listed, or is there some sort of flood management plan for that particular area, or is there some sort of traffic management situation happening for that area? There's a whole pile of different things that's probably going to flesh itself out in the development plan, and should highlight that if you look through the council maps, and you'll find out where your property is, and then it will point out what policy areas and any other issues that may apply to your particular property. So that's another thing I'd go and check out. Again, you don't want any surprises down the track and find out you've made a mistake. Next thing you want to do is try and have a good idea of, are you getting, if you're buying a property, is it a fair price? And likewise, even if you're not buying it, but you're owning it and you're thinking about developing it, you need a starting point. You need to know what you think it's worth, because then once you have a starting point, then you can say, okay, well, this is what I'm paying, this is what it's worth. Once I develop it, what will it be worth at the end? Because there's no point saying, I bought it back in 1965 for, $35,000, so I'm making money in my development. Because the thing to understand is you don't have to do a development. You can just sell it as is. So what you should be looking at is what is it worth as at right now, and use that as our starting point. And if you're buying a property, you want to know, is it a fair price? So there's a few different websites you can go to that give you market information. Price Finder, and RP Data is another one. It's called CoreLogic now, I think. There's a few different ones around. Basically, what happens is they just get out there and looking at sales in the area, but also just not sales. You're also looking at other properties that are on the market, and also I think the thing to understand about any of that statistical type stuff, it gives you the average median house prices and a whole pile of different things. Heaps of information about that actual, the area itself, the number of parks, the number of schools, how close it is to certain things, the average income for the people in the area, the number of kids the people in the area have. So it just gives you a bit of an overview of the area, and the thing to understand though, you should try and read behind the numbers. So if it says the median house price is, hi, thanks for the like, good work. If they say the median house price is $440, the thing to understand is the median house price is the middle price that a house sold for. So, example, if their house, there are 3 houses sold that month. One sold at $400,000, one sold at $440,000, another one sold for $700,000. Then the median house price is $440,000, because that's the middle price the house sold for. So the thing to understand is not the average house price. So that's why you should really understand when these numbers are coming from. And quite often what I do, because the thing is otherwise, the month before the median house price might have been $600,000. And the month before that might have been $350,000. So median house prices can be sometimes very misleading. So sometimes what I do is I get the average of all the medians for maybe a 12-month period, and that just gives you a bit of a good guide of, okay, where is the market at, and then gives you a feel for, and then the reason you try and understand that is, where is my property relative to every other house in the market? So in that particular area, I suppose. So if your property's on the market, you're thinking about buying it, it's really awesome, you're going to live there anyway, you don't really care, and it's $800,000, but the median house price is about $400,000. The thing to understand, you're buying way above the average in the area. What that means then is that just doesn't mean that no one's going to buy it off you if you have to sell it again, because obviously you're buying it, so you think it's pretty nice. The thing to understand though is a lot less people in that particular market that will pay $800,000 than there are $400,000, because that's the average. In the middle there is where most people are buying the properties. So remember, there's going to be a lot less people. It doesn't mean that people can't afford an $800,000 property. It just means that they have potential to go in other suburbs where the median house price might be $100,000. So again, it might be close to the city, it might be a more desirable area, whole pile of different things to consider. So that's why you're trying to understand the logic behind the numbers, and also you're trying to work out, if a house sold for $440,000, why did it sell for $440,000? That's to be honest, that's the more important question than it sold for $400,000. It's how long did it sit on the market for? How did the agent market it? What sort of photos did they use? Did they use a video? Did they, what's the blurb? How did they explain? Did it go to auction, or did they put it on the market? Or, what price did it start at? Did it start at $650,000 and then sold for $400,000? Because that's going to give you a really good guide of, what happened during the sales process. So the key there is to try and understand the numbers. It's just not the numbers themselves. And likewise, all the things, whenever you get onto a website and trying to research property information, trying to understand, why and what the information is, and how that information came to being, I suppose. and critically analysing the information to decide whether that applies to you. So we've got RP data, we've got government websites, some other things you can get on there is you know, when I'm looking at stuff, I also look at services, so water and gas and sewage and electricity. In South Australia, you can go to a thing called Dial Before You Dig and get on there and have a look at you know, where your sewer is connected, where the gas is connected, where the electricity poles are, all that sort of stuff. Have a good feel of, you know, is there going to be any issues down the track if you're going to do a subdivision? But even if you're not, if you know, where's everything connected to? So at least you know, at least you have an idea of, you know, what you're buying into, I suppose. So that's something that can be particularly useful, and surprising how often, you know, you assume the sewer is at the front and it's at the back of the block, you know, or there is no sewer, you know, it's a septic tank. So there's lots of things to think about when you're with services side of things, and they can cause a problem down the track. So definitely worth thinking about. So anything else we can think of? So other things you might want to have a bit of a think about is you know, maybe just go on to things like, you know, if you don't, my advice is probably it's worth paying some money if you have to. If there is things you need to pay for, RP data, you might have to pay some money. It might cost you $20, $30 to get that information about what the market's doing, or you may have to pay $10 to get a certificate of title. But you know, remember I said, you know, the average house price in Adelaide's, you know, like $400,000. So once you've bought it, once you've sold it, you've lost 40 grand already if you've made a mistake. So, you know, for the sake of $20, $30, $40, you know, it's not going to hurt you too much, I suppose. Other things you can get onto is, you know, obviously realestate.com and Domain are the two main real estate portals, I suppose they call them, real estate sales websites. Yeah, they've got some really useful information on there. They do have suburb statistics. They also have sales in the area. They do have interesting things like what schools, you know, what school zones particular properties and stuff sit in, because that can add a significant amount of value to a particular property if it's within a certain school zone. So even if you don't necessarily have kids, it's good to understand that you're within a certain zone, or maybe you're not within a certain zone. So those things can be really important as well. So but otherwise, yeah, just get in there and trying to find as much information as you possibly can, and just keep it always a bit of a, you know, keep it as a research purpose. Keep it there on hand if you ever need to, you know, look back over time. And my advice to you is just collect as much information as possible, and let the information just wash over you. You're never really going to know what you're going to use it for, but just purely by having that information there and, you know, put it in your memory bank. At some point in time, you might say, hey, I vaguely remember there was something about sewerage that I wasn't 100% sure on, but I had a report that I run at some point in time before I bought it. You know, the cool thing is, you know, then because you ran that report, you probably checked it at the point in time, so you're probably pretty confident that everything should be okay. But again, you can go back and just double check your information and make sure you hadn't made any mistakes. So hopefully that's made sense to you. You don't really have to go overboard with websites and stuff. Try and take some advice from people that really seem to know what they're talking about. Hopefully your real estate agent knows what they're talking about. If they don't, then you know, you're in trouble. Mortgage broker, likewise, get a mortgage broker you trust that can help you with things like, they may be able to go in and have a look at what stamp duty is going to cost you, and you know, the costs of interest and all the other sort of stuff. Conveyancers will give you some information about, you know, that, like I said, the title information and a whole pile of other things you maybe need to consider. Obviously, go and have a chat to your council, and they will give some information. Have a chat to, if you're thinking about building, have a chat to a builder that you can trust, I suppose. The danger is quite often you're just talking to a salesperson. They might not necessarily have enough information to help you along the process, but a surveyor can be a really useful source of information as well. That might give you some information that you may have to think about if you're considering subdividing the property. Obviously, just get advice from anyone you feel comfortable with that you think is going to give you genuine advice, and obviously get onto, you know, things like you know, my little blogs and my video blogs and stuff as well. Get on there and see if you can just learn a bit of information just in general, just before you get out there and buying properties, and just to have a good understanding of things that you need to look out for. So if you've got some ideas of websites that you think might be useful for people, then feel free to put it in the comments button below there, and I'm sure people will be interested to learn on websites that you think are really useful. If you like what I had to say, then click on the like button. If you haven't liked it, then still click on the like button, because I think it'd be really cool if you could. If you know someone's out there looking at doing stuff associated with property, and you know, you're worried they might not have enough information, then click on the share button, because I'm sure they might find this useful. And thanks guys for joining. If you've got something you'd like me to talk about in a future episode, then click on the comment box, and I'm happy to talk about anything you want to talk about. So thanks guys, look forward to catching up with you next time.